Hey, everybody. I am going live with Kevin Monroe here, and I am super excited to have him on the show. And I'm also going to click go live here on Instagram. Yep, and I'm embracing. Yes, you can. And as you guys can hear, Kevin and I have just had a chat with my kids, and we're embracing imperfection already. So this is exactly mom life, right? We just roll with it. And I was introduced to Kevin through a mutual friend, Dr. Gina Anderson. And I was talking with Dr. Gina about gratitude and just how much I love gratitude and how it helps with my mental highways of frustration, or if we're running late or something like that, I can take a mental back road of gratitude. So I was telling Dr. Gina about all this, and she said, you need to meet my friend Kevin. He is a gratitude, like just a crusader, I would say, a gratitude crusader. And you truly have been. And I was thrilled that you agreed to do this live with me, because July is Don't Wait to Think month. And I'm going to have you tell us a bit about your story, Kevin, and
Okay.
what made you create Don't Wait to Think, and why should we all be doing
Okay. Well, Valerie, thank you so much. I
it?
remember the day we met. Uh, I remember you and Gina were live on her podcast,
Yes.
and Gina had said something, and something had come up about gratitude, and I get tagged into the thread, and I see it come up, and I jump into the conversation. I was enjoying listening, and I. I'm always excited to meet someone else who's in the gratitude space and encouraging people to live in gratitude and to embrace the imperfection of life. And I'm glad to be here on To Mom is Love, is to love, because, I will tell you, that's what my mom was, still
Mm.
is. She's passed, but my mom was love. And my mom was, well, I guess, the first source of, uh, oh, unconditional love in my life. And so I'm excited to be here today and to talk about gratitude. And yes, it's July 2nd. So this is day 2 of Don't Wait to Thank, where and it wasn't me. I am really uh I'm grateful for the people on my team and in my life. And it was someone on our team who came up with this idea. And Valerie, if I'm honest, and I want to be honest and transparent, at first I was okay. So let me backstory. 2 years ago, yesterday, 2 years ago, July 1st of 2022, we launched an initiative in the world. I'm grateful for you.
Mm.
And that had started about 6 weeks before, in the middle of May, late May. Uh, I had the opportunity in 2022 to present an idea of presenting to one of the biggest companies, a company I'd love to work with. Uh, I was presenting to a guy who was vetting speakers. He was not hiring, he was vetting speakers for Chick-fil-A.
Mm.
And so he was the one doing all the back work. So there I am. And the day before I met him, I'm in with Susie Consoli, who is our web guru and runs Lawson House Media. And we're together, and it was just our monthly call. It's kind of like, well, what's going on? I'm like, oh, there's this thing I'm doing tomorrow. She's like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm telling her, and she's like, oh, what are you going to share? And I'm like, the usual stuff. And she goes, you can't give them the usual stuff. You got to up your game. And so out of that up the game conversation, we're just kicking around ideas. And it's Susie that says to me, she said, well, Kevin, I watch your videos and I read your emails, and you always sign off saying, hey, I hope you know I'm grateful for you.
Mm.
What could we do with that? Now, I had seen, let me see if I can find this. I mean, so, giving credit where credit is due, there was actually a movement a movement of these cards that say you matter.
Mm.
You
Yes.
matter. And I had learned of this through my friend Brad Aronson, who wrote the book Humankind. I learned about You Matter, and I was so inspired, and I've been giving out some You Matter cards, and when Susie says, "What could we do with I'm grateful for you?" I'm like, "Well, we could make an I'm grateful for you card."
Mm.
And and for me, it was a little bit different because I wanted the card to be a vehicle for people to have an interaction, and on the back of the card, right, not just to give people a card, but on the back, write a little note as to why I'm grateful for you.
Yeah.
And so, the next day I'm on a call with this guy Harrison, pitching this idea, and the cards don't exist at that time. I'm saying, imagine a card, and it looks like this, and it's got these words on the front. And 20 minutes into the call, he was sold. He's like, "Gosh, I want to send you over. I want to recommend we hire you." And anyway, so I'm all excited, and I asked him, "What was it? What is it that makes you want to recommend me as a speaker?" And he goes, "Kevin, it's the little card, the
Mm.
little card." Because we'd also talked about a bigger one, and I'll show those in a moment. But I'm like, the little card. And he said, when people go to a conference, usually they forget what's happened at the conference by the time they leave, or at least by the time they get home, and it's not actionable. But if
Yeah.
everybody left the conference with stacks of these cards and they start carrying the cards with them, and then when something amazing happens in the workplace, they share the gratitude they have for somebody with them. Like, that's a great idea. So, Valerie, the next week, I hadn't heard back. I didn't hear back, and for the record, I still haven't heard back, right? 2 years later, didn't get called for that one yet. I still believe it'll call.
Yes,
But
yes.
the next week I had the idea, if Harrison thought it was a good idea, why wait for somebody to validate? Let's get
Mm.
started. So we ordered 2,500 of these little cards, that what we call an impact card, and we ordered 500 of the legacy cards, a 4x6 note card. And then someone on Susie's team said, "Well, you need to have an envelope to put them in." And you've seen the envelope, but they came up with this envelope, and it is audacious, right? It's like a mini
I love it.
billboard, right? It says, "I'm grateful for you." Now, the designer that created this saw something that I had not yet seen about this project. I've seen it since. I've seen it time and again. If
Mhm.
you give these out in an audience of 200 people, 500 people, 750 people, which we've done. We put these in audiences like that, and everybody picks up an envelope and holds them up. It makes a great photo op, right? And
There
these
you
show
go.
up on a photo. That's what the designer saw. I was
Yeah.
thinking, well, this is a little big for the postal carrier, right? So
That's
May
great.
19th of this year, Valerie, I'm on a Zoom with Caroline Lewis from Lawson House. And I said, Caroline, we're coming up on this anniversary, the 2-year anniversary of introducing this to the world. What could we do to celebrate?
Mhm.
That's the question I ask. And Caroline goes, "Well, we could do a month-long celebration." I'm like, "Well, that's a little bigger than I had in mind," but she goes, and I said, "Well, write it up. Tell me what you're thinking." So the next week they sent me a concept for this, and by then it had a name.
Mm.
And Valerie, when I saw the name, I was hooked, right? Don't wait to think. And the idea that was behind this initially was summertime's a lull in so many places, right? There's the summertime slump. There's the challenges that parents are having because kids have been out of school long enough that the fun of
Mhm.
kids being out of school, might be wearing off a little, and you're getting ready to go back to school. All of that stuff. People are on vacations, summertime slump, and we know the year end is coming. And November, if you're in the States, November is officially gratitude month, right? Because
Mhm.
there's Thanksgiving, and people that aren't grateful any other time in the year think they should be grateful at least one day a year, and that day happens to be Thanksgiving. But we're like, why? Don't wait to think. Do it now. So that's what started this. And then when we started the planning of it, we're a month into the planning. So this is just 2 weeks ago when I'm having an information meeting, and a guy shows up at the information meeting. You were at that information meeting. I remember you dropped in, and there was a guy, Frank Sinclair, there that leads a group on Facebook called the Be Encouraged Network. And they have 100,000 members of the Be Encouraged network. And I
Amazing.
know other people that are parts of network, project management institutes, another network, some big recovery movements, some parenting movement. It's like, you know what? We could mobilize 1 million gratitudes expressed in the month of July. And Valerie, that's when I really got excited.
That's incredible. And I love that rationale for it being the slump, and July is a good time of year to do that. That's
Yeah.
great. I was talking with Dr. Gina Anderson about how, like, I'm just such a history nerd. I love history. And we were talking about just a bit of like what we all know, the origins or the origin story of Thanksgiving, but we don't talk as much about Sarah Josepha Hale, who she like really for years would talk to politicians, talk to people about Thanksgiving should be celebrated throughout the country. And finally, in 1863, Abraham Lincoln granted her request because it was the Civil War. And
Mm.
he wanted this to be a time to come together amongst uncertainty and chaos.
Wow.
And I thought that was such a beautiful, like, wow, that is such a great message to be thankful amongst uncertainty and chaos. And that happened, that's still happening to this day, right? If we
I was
turn on
gonna
the
say, wait
news.
a minute, 1863, there was
Yes.
uncertainty and chaos.
Mhm.
2024, we've
Yes.
now added, you may or may not know the term, it came from the military some years back, VUCA, the
Mm.
VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Right? Those are the terms
Yes.
that the military talks about when they go into a war. It's a VUCA world. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. You don't know. And while you may have planned all kinds of things, there was a general decades ago that said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. You
Mhm.
make all of these plans, and then all of a sudden life happens. Or as a friend of mine, Angie Chaplin, said, when life gets lifey, right? Life has a
Right.
way of getting lifey. And then all of a sudden your plans, it's just gone, but volatile, ambiguous, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so the uncertainty is still there in our world. And
Mhm.
it messes with us. So when I want to go back and make sure when we talk about this, don't wait to think.
Yeah.
At the root of this, at the heart of this, is inviting as many people as possible. And to me, this is like an easy ask to express thanks, appreciation, and gratitude. Thanks, appreciation, or gratitude. They're no perfect words. You're just, if you feel grateful for someone, you feel thankful for someone, once a day, communicate that to one person, right? Just one time a day, if you would communicate that. So imagine what would happen if, I mean, we started thinking, gosh, if 10,000 people commit to that, and then there's this compounding effect that happens because you've experienced it. We talked about this earlier today. It's so common when somebody expresses gratitude to you, it feels so good. And you probably understand the biochemistry of that way better than I do with your background. But the oxytocin, the endorphins, the all of the rush of the good hormones in your body, you feel so good. It's real common that you pass it on. You give thanks to someone else. There's this ripple effect.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so if there are people, I love this. There are people that started telling me last week, I've made my list for the whole month. They've mapped out the 31 people they are going to thank. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so much better at this than me. I'm more of a wing it. Let's just see what happens. Who comes up today? But there are people who've told me they've mapped this out. They
Mhm.
have the 31 people. So I was on a conversation earlier today, and somebody said, oh yeah, I'm planning on thanking one of my teachers, because we started talking about teachers.
Yeah.
But if you just say, I appreciate you. Now, we are inviting people to push the envelope just a little and either put it in writing or make a video or a voicemail message of that. Now, why would you do that, Kevin? Right? That's raising the bar. Well, Valerie, it creates a longer shelf life
Mm.
because I mean, do you have notes and cards you keep?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I have files of them. And when you
Yeah.
have one of those, and there are times, and a friend of mine, Lori, she got a note from an anonymous, not an anonymous, but from a stranger. The person introduced themselves in the note, but she's an artist. And it was someone that appreciated her art that had never met her, sends her a card. She told me, I read the card 5 or 6 times that afternoon.
Mm.
Right, that's what I mean, that's how it feeds our soul, and you pick it up and you read it and you go, "Really? Really?" And then you read it again, or you put it somewhere. And when you have one of those really down days, or you have those days when bad news seems to outweigh the good news, and you start questioning, right? Eh, Gosh, do I have any sanity left? Do I have anything to offer the world? And then you open up one of these files and you start reading the cards. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I remember when that happened. I remember when that happened. Right. So that's why we encourage people to write it down,
Mm.
because people hold on to it and they read it again or they post it somewhere on the refrigerator. I had a lady of when we first did these cards 2 years ago, and she told me recently that she sent a card to a friend, and the friend said, "Oh," and took a picture. I posted it on my refrigerator, and it's still there 2 years later. Why?
Amazing.
Because it means so much.
It's so powerful. It's so powerful. And Kevin, you remind me, I talk sometimes about Acadia National Park. I don't know if you've been out there before. It's beautiful. I went there last year and I saw a child throw a pebble into the pond
Uh,
of, I think it's called Jordan Pond or Jordan's Pond, but it's a beautiful pond. It reflects so beautiful on the sun. And it just, the way he threw it in there, the ripples
Ripple.
were beautiful. And I truly feel like writing these notes, you encouraging us or anyone encouraging the other person, you're creating that ripple. And the more ripples we create, the more we can change our community and ultimately the world if we continue to focus on those things.
Absolutely. That's spot on, Valerie. I have a friend, Chester Elton. He was with us yesterday on the launch. Chester, and I didn't know, I don't know if I knew this because he had told me before. I don't know if I knew he has an intention and aspiration of giving one of these out every single day. But he gave me a gratitude rock. He carries them
Love
with
it.
him and he gives gratitude rocks. Why? Because when you cast a rock, it creates a ripple.
Mm,
And he's giving those out to somebody every day to create these ripples. And people often, when he sees them again, they tell him they still have their rock, or they tell him where they've put the rock or what they do with the rock. I keep mine right here on my desk where I see it every day, right? It's one of the, so it's the gift that keeps on giving. Now, you said something. I met, okay, when I met Dr. Gina a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, maybe 3.5. We became fast friends around gratitude. And Gina has shared this. Her company, Luma Brighter Learning, does training and education for transportation companies. And they had surveyed, this one blew my mind when she's telling me this. Then she sent me, they surveyed 700,000 truck drivers. And one of the top things truck drivers wanted to know more about was, guess,
I would say
gratitude.
gratitude. That's
Gratitude.
amazing. Oh
And
my
Gina's like,
gosh.
"Kevin, I don't know anybody that teaches gratitude. Will you?" And I'm like, "Sure, count me in."
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to speak at their conference in May in Houston and be there with people in the room. And we're talking about gratitude. We're talking about these ripples. And there were ripples that happened in the room, right?
Mm.
There was a guy. So you did this earlier today. Anytime I'm doing an event, I ask people, we create it around something, right? And we ask people to send a message to someone that fits this category. Well, that day we were talking about how people the joy they found from the work, the meaning they found in the work, the opportunity to give back, make a difference to others. And we ask, who is someone that's made a difference in your career?
Mhm.
And this one guy, and then everybody's asked to text someone in the moment, right? Real time. And this one guy sends a text. And at the end of the meeting, I said, "So, did anybody hear back?" And he's jumped up. He's not just raising his hand, he's standing up with his phone in his hand. I'm like, wow, this is crazy, right? I've never seen anybody that excited. And he goes, let me read, let me read. And he sent a message to a guy who is a very busy man, is how he described him. And he
Mm.
said, look at the timestamp. Within 2 minutes of sending the message, he sent a response. And the
Mm.
reply said something to the effect of, wow, thank you for your message. Hiring you was one of the best decisions I've made. Not only are you an awesome employee, this part I remember verbatim, you're an even better human.
Oh, wow. I love
And this guy,
that.
he's like, what? And he told me, I'm printing this out. I'm
Yeah.
saving this. Now, gee, Valerie, here's what's really crazy about this. He's the one that had communicated gratitude.
That's
Right? But it's the
amazing.
boomerang effect. When
Yep.
you communicate gratitude, it often comes back to you. So
Mhm.
he communicates gratitude, thanking someone for the hiring him, believing in him, and the message he gets back wowed him and moved him emotionally. And I mean, we've shared some messages since then. He still remembers that day, that text, that moment. And that's the
Beautiful.
power of one expressed gratitude, right? That's the
So
power.
powerful.
And the most common, okay, 2 years we've been doing this. And a friend of mine, Dallas from New Zealand, right? So we've got people in New Zealand. Yesterday morning, when we started this, the first post I saw before 6 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time, I see a post from Dr. Sven Haas in Germany. And
Mhm.
German, expressing gratitude and talking about the power of gratitude. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It started in Germany. The next post I see is from Daisy in Brazil in Portuguese. I'm like, oh, right. Then
That's
last night or late yesterday afternoon, I see a post. And at first I'm like, what? Because it says it's day 2 of Don't Wait to Think. And I'm like, it's still day 1. Oh no, this is Dallas in New Zealand. Right, so in New Zealand, she was
wow.
excited to express her gratitude, and it's already Tuesday, now it's already Wednesday in New Zealand, they're on day 3, but she had a reply, and she posted it in her post. She'd sent a card to someone, she blacked out names, and someone said, "This made my day." And Valerie, that's the number one most frequently reported response in 2 years of encouraging thousands of people to express gratitude. The most common reported response is, "You made my day," or "That made my day."
It's
And what
beautiful.
we have the opportunity to make somebody's day every single day in July. And imagine the ripple effects of that, the ripple effects of that. And when you do it and you do it again tomorrow and you do it again the next day. And you know what? There's nothing that says you can only do one a day. Maybe you do one, two, three, four, five a day. And there was a another friend of mine in Wisconsin, uh Wisconsin, Minnesota, Wisconsin. She went to a group meeting last week, right before this took, and she took some of the "I'm grateful for you" cards, and she was in a room of a dozen people and gave them all cards and expressed gratitude to a dozen people that
Mm.
she's part of this ongoing community group with, and it blew up in that meeting. She's like, it was embarrassing how emotional it got, right? People were just responding, they're weeping. I know Jeanette in Spain. I met her last November. Found out she was about to have her team of 28 people join her the following a week, 10 days away. And she got all excited about these cards. I said, okay, I'm going to ask you something crazy. If I sent you cards today, would you have time to write each of them a note before your meeting. She goes, I promise I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I go to box up and send her cards, and I go to the UPS store and I'm like, what? It's that. They wanted $150 to overnight them. And I'm like, I said, what's 2 day? And they're like $75. I said, I'll take the 2 day option. They still delivered them the next day. Thank you, UPS, for giving me next day service at 2 day price.
There you go.
Jeanette wrote 28 notes.
Mm.
And she took time and invested to think about each person, because when we encourage people to write and communicate gratitude, I'll show you a real simple. We encourage the 3 S's. Keep it simple, be sincere, and be specific. Make it specific, right?
Mhm.
Just don't. So here's a card I often use. This is the card I was showing you a moment ago, but on the back I go, so imagine you give a card that says you rock on it.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody gets the card, and man, high five. They're all excited. They get home that night and they're at dinner, and their partner or one of the kids says, so anything good happened today? Well, I got this card from the boss. Really? What did it say? It says you rock. Well, what did you do that rocked? I don't know. Right? There's no specificity to it. But what if you said, hey, I appreciate your sense of humor or your creativity. And, remember last week we had that really tense moment in the meeting, and you brought a appropriate levity that just broke the ice and relieved the tension in the room. I appreciate that.
Mm.
I appreciate your consistency. I appreciate that even when things are tough in your personal life and you're juggling multiple responsibilities, you still go the extra mile here. I want to celebrate that, right? So be specific, keep it simple. But the most important part is be sincere. If you don't mean it, don't say it,
Yeah.
because people have very uh, highly attuned BS detectors.
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
you don't mean it, it's just better to not say it.
Yeah. I love that. And it reminds me of when I was in college, Kevin, and I wasn't as the 3 S's. Let's say them one more time: simple, sincere, and specific.
Specific.
I
Okay,
used
so
to.
let me give you the formula.
Yeah, yeah, do
Simple,
it.
sincere plus specific equals significant,
Ooh,
right?
okay.
And then, so we put these in a graph. We have them in a Venn diagram. The 3 circles: simple, sincere, specific, equals significant, big circle. And then below that, we go times consistent equals transformational.
Mm.
Right? You think about this. If you regularly and consistently tell people on your team, in your life, I'm grateful for you, I appreciate you, and it's simple, sincere, and specific, that has a significant impact. You do it consistently, it changes the atmosphere, it changes the environment. I know of a teacher. She said, the last election cycle was as toxic as this one, and there was so much. She stopped going into the lounge, the teachers' lounge on break, because it was so toxic and is just
Mm.
so. She just hated being in there without any permission from anyone. First day of the month, she walks in, she puts up a sign, a little poster board. What are you grateful for?
Mm.
And a couple of people wrote. She went back in the next day, wrote another one, put another one up, put another one. She said by 10 days in, they're people are writing all over these now. By 10 days in, the environment in the teachers' lounge had changed.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it really is transformational. Like
It
when
is.
you practice that and do that and every day getting that habit of doing it, and then you're excited to do it, you're wanting to do it, you're looking for opportunities to do it, and it just puts a perspective on something different. And I think it was Alfred Adler, like over 100 years ago, said
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like, in order to cure or to treat depression, said, think of something that you can do to give another person joy. And he gave that prescription for, I think, 14 days. And isn't that amazing that he, like, over 100 years ago,
Wow.
said that,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
how it's so simple, but it's so, so powerful. It's
Okay.
amazing.
So that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. It comes from uh Randy Pausch, who is known for the last lecture. Uh, Sharing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most profound acts a human can do for another, right?
Mm,
Sharing gratitude. So when we show gratitude showing gratitude is the simplest yet most profound act a human can do for another. That's what we're inviting people to do. That's what Adler was inviting people to do, right?
yes.
See something in someone that you want to appreciate, that you value. And we know this. William James said
Mhm.
the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated, right? The deepest principle in human nature is we have a craving. People want to be seen, heard, valued, and appreciated. And when you stop to see, hear, value, or appreciate someone and you communicate that, you gave them a gift. You gave them a gift, and that gift produces joy, as you just said from Adler.
That's yes,
And
100%.
I just looked at the clock and I mean, I'm
I know
fine to
we
keep
talked this
going,
whole time. This is awesome.
but you're
Um,
like, can we go 20 or 30 minutes? I said, let's see. Yeah,
let's see
we can
how
go
it
another.
is. That's great. That's great. Well, I want to say one more thing because Kevin, you've been reminding me of something that I was writing about earlier from David Standel Rast. I
Oh
don't know if I'm
yeah, yeah,
pronouncing
yeah,
that
yeah.
right. And it was a TED talk, and he was talking about grateful when there's a combination of a gift deemed subjectively valuable and it is given without the expectation of anything in its return. And he also points out similarly, we can live with feelings of gratitude moment by moment because this, in essence, each moment we have on this planet is a
Mm,
gift. We did
it
not do
is.
anything to receive this bit of time, nor do we have control of the next moment. And I thought
Yeah,
that was just so beautiful.
yeah.
Be
So
grateful.
he's a monk, Brother David is what he goes by.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
right. That's right. Uh-huh.
Brother David, on one of his talks, and I've listened to it many times.
Uh-huh.
Um, it, he says, "Look up at the sky."
Mm,
Right? Just whatever you're doing now, stop and look up at the sky because we don't look up at the sky enough. And somehow when you just stop and I do this so many times on walks or when I'm outside, I just stop and I look up and I'm just mesmerized by the beauty, whether it's a blue sky without a cloud or whether there are these amazing cloud formations that you see, right? But what if you just stop and you just look up and you go,
mhm,
wow, there's something to be grateful for. Why? Because there's something bigger than us here. Right? There's
mm.
something beyond us. And that's one of the things I love about gratitude. It reminds us of that sense of transcendence, right? The
Yes.
world is bigger than us. I'm looking out your back window now. I see
Yeah.
trees glowing. I see the blue sky, right? And those things help ground me when life is tough, when life is difficult, when kids are crazy or we have grandkids, when grandkids are crazy, when circumstances of life are crazy, when you got bad news about your health, whatever it is, financial, you know,
Mhm.
despair hits your home and you're just thinking all this, well, you can go to nature, you can look outside, you can see that the sun's still shining. And guess what? It's still going to shine tomorrow. The moon's going to be out, the clouds, the trees, the breeze, and you can just find that sense of, oh, yeah, there's something bigger than this at play. And there
Mm,
are these things that have been consistent for centuries. The sun has shone every day for centuries now. That gives me peace. That gives me comfort when my life is uncertain or when it's volatile, right? And when things just feel chaotic. There are things that we can find that ground ourselves in. And when we express gratitude, here's the other thing, neuroscientists, you can't be stressed and anxious at the same moment,
yes.
right? you,
Love
you
it.
you can go from one to the other, but there are times when I am in anxiety, when I'm anxious about something, I just go, oh wow, you know what, I need a gratitude bath. I just
Gratitude bath.
I
Yes.
just need to make a long list of things. I just don't need to say, "Hey, I'm thankful for this." I just need to write as many things as come to mind or
Mm,
speak them out. One of my favorite things to do, I'm a big user of LinkedIn. And on LinkedIn, in the messaging platform from the mobile app, you can send a 1-minute voice message, and it's limited to 1 minute. It cuts you off. But what if you just dropped somebody a message and you just tell them, And it's powerful because they hear it in your voice,
Yes.
right? And you just leave them a message and you just tell them. And the other thing I'll drop here, hey, if you are nudged, you think of someone and you're like, why did I think of them? Just call them, send them a text, whatever, let them know you're thinking of them, you appreciate them, those kind of things. Those nudges, that person may be at a moment of despair, and you reaching out may be a lifeline of
Mm.
hope to them.
Yes.
And all you did is just say, "Hey, Valerie, I was thinking of you. I want you to know, I remember when we did this, or I appreciate that podcast you had, and I heard this for the first time." Whatever it is, those, man, they are game changers for us.
Absolutely. That's beautiful, Kevin.
So
Kevin,
please don't wait to thank. If you're
oh my
watching,
gosh.
join us on Don't Wait to Thank and see what you do in your circles. Okay, so the final thing, we realize there are like 4 C's. If you may be part of a circle, you may be part of a community. So if you're in a book club, right, a sewing circle, a giving circle, any of those circles, share this with people in your circle. If you're part of a community, an online community, a physical community, co-working space, if you're part of a company, bring this to your company or your team. Or if you're a member of a congregation, share this with your congregation. Because you know what? People of faith, they get gratitude and they've been taught to be grateful in whatever faith tradition they have, because there are no faith traditions that are teaching people to not be grateful. They're all encouraging gratitude and thankfulness. So, circles,
Absolutely.
communities, companies, congregations, invite them to join. Don't wait to thank.
Oh, love it. Yes, join us. I'm putting all of these links on the show
Thank
notes
you.
here.
Thank
And
you.
so I'll also, when I post this, I'll put the links on there as well, because it's beautiful. And Kevin, like, you are just a ray of sunshine. I love
Mm.
talking with you. I absolutely think that everyone needs to be hearing this important message, joining in on Don't Wait to Thank. And next week, I actually am going to be able to talk with Kevin on my podcast. And we're actually recording next week, and I'm going to get it out next Wednesday. Wednesday, I think, is July 10th.
Yeah.
So be in tune for that. It'll be available on Apple, Spotify, Google. But in the meantime, we would love to hear what you've done and Don't Wait to Thank. Share it with us, share it with Kevin, share it with me. I just absolutely love it all. And I'm so thankful and grateful for you, Kevin.
Okay, and Valerie, I want to say, I want to thank you, because when we started this, because we were doing this with very little notice, right? I mean, we're just going crazy. You were the first person that said, "Will you be on my podcast about this?" And you found the early day. I'm like, absolutely, because this is how it grows.
Yes.
People have audiences, people have circles of influence, and for you to use your circle of influence and invite me to come and share about Don't Wait to Thank and expressing gratitude, why wouldn't I do that? Right. So I'm incredibly grateful, because Val, you were the first one that asked. Now, this morning, I was on a call with the second person that asked, Lucinda uh, Carney from the UK, someone I've known for years. When she saw it, and she saw it after you did, but her first response was, "Oh my gosh, we got to get this on the podcast."
Yeah.
And she's getting it out next week on her podcast. So, and if you are listening and you have a podcast or a platform and you go, "Hey, can we talk about Don't Wait to Think?" Absolutely. Please
Yes.
invite us. Okay, that's
The
the
more
other
the
thing.
merrier.
We all, every single one of us has the power of invitation. We can
Mm.
invite someone to something, whatever that is, right? And the power of invitation, I've learned so much about this over the last 5 years. I started hosting community meetings a little over 5 years ago, and it blew up like crazy, Valerie. And when people started coming, we'd ask, "How did you get here? How did you get here? How did you learn about this?" And the answer was always the same. "Oh, Valerie invited me," or "Steve invited me," or "David," right? Somebody invited someone. We have
Mhm.
the power of invitation. And when
Mm.
we extend invitations gracefully, people are as free to say yes as they are no.
Yes.
Right? So
Absolutely.
we just invite. Hey, do you want to be part of Don't Wait to Thank? Join us. I heard about this thing. You can be part of it. We can do it together. Just invite people. So thank you for inviting me.
You are so welcome. Thank you, Kevin. Really appreciate it. And I really appreciate all of our listeners out there. If you're checking out this live today or on the replay, I hope everyone out there has a beautiful day. And thank you again.
Bye.